Some of my ex-best friends are on their way now to the real thing, to the APEC conference, which will start on this weekend. Politicians, journalists, to what I call as the annual drug dealers conference. They will discuss how many more drugs will they send to the Israel occupation-addicted state, how much more friendship will they express, and how much more money and weapons will they supply. And I can tell you, in the United States, as an Israeli, we don't have a bigger enemy than the Jewish lobby. We don't have a bigger enemy for justice, for peace, for equality, than those who think that if you supply the drug addicted with more drugs, you are his friend. That if you support him blindly and automatically, whatever he does, you are a friend. No, my friends, those are not friends, those are enemies. The title of my lecture speaks about Zionism. And Zionism is one of the two religions of Israel. The second religion is obviously the religion of security. So between Zionism and security, anyone in Israel who dares to raise any kind of question marks is immediately perceived as a traitor. It's impossible to describe you what does it mean to say that you have some questions about Zionism. And if you claim that the Israeli IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces, are not the most moral army in the world, let's say they are the second moral army in the world, how dare you? As you might know, occupation is off the table in Israel. Nobody talks about it, nobody discussed it, nobody is concerned about the occupation. It is, like one of those things, like the rain, like the sun, force majeure. Some like it less, but nobody thinks that anything can be done about it. It doesn't bother us so much, that's the truth. It's only half an hour away from our homes, but who hears about it and who cares about it? And the crimes are on a daily basis, but really daily basis. The media hardly covers them, and if they cover them, it will be always according to the Zionistic narrative. A terrorist of 12, a girl of 14 with scissors in her hands as an existential threat to the state of Israel, a girl who is slapping a soldier as someone who deserves life sentence, not less than this, a girl that 1 hour before her cousin was shot in his head 50 meters away from her home. So now the Israeli army claims that this was fabricated. When Israel dares to claim that this child, Muhammad Tamimi, whom I met a few days after he was injured, he lost half of his brain, that he fabricated his injury, then you see that Israel is really desperate. If Israel needs this kind of level of propaganda, if Israel is getting so low in denying shooting in the head of a child of 15 and claiming that he fell from the bicycles, then you know that things are getting worse. And all those are passing Israeli society as if nothing is happening. No question marks, very little moral doubts, if at all. A cover-up, living in denial like never before. I cannot think about one society which lives in such denial like the Israeli society. The first very deep-rooted value, and let's face it, is the value that we are the chosen people. Seculars and religious will claim so. And even if they don't admit it, they feel so. And the implementation is very simple. If we are the chosen people, who are you to tell us what to do? Who are you? Who is the international community to tell Israel what to do? International law, wonderful thing. It doesn't apply on us. It applies on any other place on earth, not on Israel. Because we are the chosen people, don't you understand it? The second very deep-rooted value is obviously the value of we, the victims, not only the biggest victims, but the only victims around. I know many occupations which were longer than Israeli occupation, than the Israeli occupation. Some were even more brutal, even though it's getting harder and harder to be more brutal than the Israeli occupation. I don't recall one occupation in which the occupier present himself as the victim. Not only the victim, the only victim. The late Golda Meir, whom I quoted also last time, I know, but it is so unforgettable I have to use it again. She once said that we will never forgive the Arabs for forcing us to kill their children. We are the victims. We are forced to kill their children. Poor us. And as the victim and the only victim in history, again, it enables us the rights to do whatever we want, and nobody is going to tell us what to do, because we are the only victims. To this, there is a third very deep-rooted value, and this is the very deep belief, again, everyone will deny it, but if you scratch under the skin of almost every Israeli, you'll find it there. The Palestinians are not equal human beings like us. They are not like us. They don't love their children like us. They don't love life like us. They were born to kill. They are cruel. They are sadists. They have no values, no manners. Look how they kill us. This is very, very deep-rooted in Israeli society, and maybe that's the key issue. Because as long as this continues, nothing will move. As long as most of the Israelis don't perceive the Palestinians as equal human beings, we are so much better than them. We are so much developed than them. And we are so much human than them. So you have a society with a deep conviction in its justice, in its right way, with very, very few question marks. Anyone who dares to raise a question mark is immediately, in a very systematic way, is immediately erased, demolished. It's unbelievable how this machinery works in Israel. We are talking here about how efficient is the Jewish lobby here. Look at the Jewish lobby, so-called, in Israel, breaking the silence. For years we were dreaming about the day that soldiers will stand up and say the truth. Not Gideon Levy, the liar, the traitor who tells us all kinds of stories about the Israeli crimes. No. Soldiers who have committed those crimes will just come and testify about what they have been doing. And here it came. Over 1,000 testimonies of soldiers who, in a very brave way, gave their testimonies about what they have been doing in the occupied territories throughout the years. This should have been an earthquake in any healthy society. It's our sons. But what happened? Nothing. Breaking the silence was immediately delegitimized by the establishment with the typical collaboration with the Israeli media. Here I allow myself to say with no doubt that this is today one of the most brutal, cruel tyrannies on earth. Not less than this. I repeat it, the military occupation in the occupied territories is today one of the brutal, cruel tyrannies on earth. How dare can someone call Israel the only democracy in the Middle East when in its backyard there is one of the most cruel, brutal tyrannies in the world? How can you do it? Can you be half pregnant? Can you be half democratic? Can you be a democracy in the front and a tyranny in your backyard? And here comes the next lie that we should fight. The claim that it is all temporary. No, my friends, it was never meant to be temporary. It is not temporary, and it will not be temporary if it depends on Israel. There was never an Israeli statesman in an important position, in an influential position, prime minister or so, who really meant to put an end to the occupation. None of them. As I'm very, very skeptical about change from within the Israeli society, because life in Israel is far too good and brainwash system is far too efficient. To have a dialogue today with most of the Israelis is, even for me, almost an impossible job. But when you start to talk with them about the occupation, after 2 minutes you want just to tear your hairs. I mean, you don't know what to do. You don't know where to start. Brainwash is so deep, and the denial is so deep, and the ignorance, they know nothing. Anyone in this hall knows so much more about the occupation than any average Israeli, including those who served there in the army. They know nothing, and what they know is wrong. So to expect a change from within this society, when restaurants are packed, when life is beautiful, when there is hardly terror in Israel, there's hardly, I mean, even what they call terror, those exploding buses and all those things. The only violent attacks are mainly now in the occupied territories, not in Tel Aviv. Tel Aviv is living a very, very peaceful, secure life. So to expect this society to stand up and to say no more, out of what? What incentive? So as long as this balance is that Israel is either gaining out of the occupation or not paying anything for it, as long as any Israeli doesn't feel that the occupation is something he should think about, why should he be bothered? He doesn't pay, he's not punished, and even if he's paid, he does not make the linkage. Because even if there were those years of the Second Intifada, which were really, really bloody, with exploding buses and suicide bombers, nobody made the linkage to the occupation. If you dare to make the linkage, you will be immediately accused as a traitor, because how dare you, because you justify terror. So they explode buses because they were born to kill. It has nothing to do with the occupation. So there was no progress or change, even not after the violence. So if life is so good, there is really no reason to go for a change, and therefore the hopes for change from within the Israeli society are really, really very minimal.